Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Izuku becomes the best magician and got harem with Ochako, Mina, and Shiozaki, part 1. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, I know what I do, link is in the description, also subscribe to our channel, and like this video, so let's begin the video. Over 400 years ago, in the unassuming coastal town of New Iberia, Louisiana, a man was strung up by his throat from a large ancient southern live oak, punished for his crimes against God and all of humanity. In the throes of the Civil War, the Confederacy was struggling and the tides were turning against them. The Union, utilizing new technology like the telegraph and taking advantage of the railroad system, along with an influx of black soldiers, were beginning to enforce their will, and the Confederate States were afraid and desperate, specifically the soldiers, more specifically a soldier from Athens, Georgia was afraid for his life. What would happen after the war? Would he be hung for treason against the United States? If he wasn't to be hung, what would his life be like when he got home? Would he even have a life when he got back? He could barely afford the slaves he has back at his farm now, paying for labor would bankrupt him and his family, and siring nothing. But girl's maid taking care of the farm with just his family was near impossible. For weeks on end, the Georgia-born soldier, while waiting for his next assignment, was racked with worry as he waited for the day that the Confederate States would surrender and his life would be over. That was until a tree spoke to him, not with a voice, but something else similar to speech, but not. None, other than the soldier, could say exactly when and why a tree decided to speak to him, but others can say how often he went to the old tree. Every day for a month during his lunch he would pick up his meager provisions and head to the old knotted tree that was right off the road towards a nearby plantation and less than half a mile from his encampment. Every day he would sit down at the base of the trunk, right underneath its hunch, and he would talk about everything to the ancient evergreen. He would bemoan about not having a warm meal, gush about his family back home, and he admitted his fears of the future. He talked a lot about his fears, noticing that the old oak seemed to actually enjoy hearing about his feelings, unlike his fellow soldiers or his superiors. The man also noticed, as he rambled on about himself, the tree was getting better, livelier, knots that were formed decades ago started to smooth over, forming new layers of bark, dark and healthy, the long branches stretching out over 8 feet were straightening, looking less gnarled, and the hunch in its back started to level. Like a proud grandparent hearing stories from their grandchildren, the years seemed to fall off the tree, and it gained energy from just hearing him, and it made him happy. He was ecstatic when he actually heard its voice for the first time, outright crying for joy, as the soft, airy voice directly entered his mind, and with vigor said, "I think I can help you. I think I can help you end this war and save your farm. No, I promise I will." The soldier, so overcome with joy, didn't even question how a large plant rooted to ground was supposed to suddenly end a war, but he believed it. It wouldn't be too long for the tree to have a chance at fulfilling its promise. 3 days after hearing the voice, the man and the rest of the troops in New Iberia marched to the nearby state of Mississippi to reinforce a Confederate army that was amid battle. Expecting both opposing armies to be exhausted and lacking in provisions and ammunition, the smaller and well-stocked Louisiana army planned to merge into the bigger Mississippi army and overwhelm their enemy. Instead, when the soldiers made it to the site of the battle, they found a well-provisioned, well-rested, and large Union army waiting for them with hardly any Confederates around. The Confederates proceeded to get slaughtered, but despite the loud cries of anguish and pain, the booming of muskets, and the splattering of dirt, mud, blood, and bone, the Georgian couldn't feel despair or sadness from his environment, because the angelic voice of the tree, giving him instructions, cut right through the chaos that was all around. "Bear yourself to the land and wash yourself in the dirt, and this battle is yours," the voice instructed, and so he did. As men around fell, so did his clothing. As balls whizzed by his head, he covered himself in the dirt. After he was bathed head to toe in dirt, he kneeled onto the ground as if he was praying, closed his eyes, and sat still enough to be easy pickings for someone to blow him away even 300 yards out, but no musket ball came, and, as he kneeled, the land shook, unnoticeable at first too, but it steadily grew more powerful. As it began to shake more and more, the ground became more unstable, and, as the ground became more unstable, the soldiers from both sides began to stop fighting, as their battle became secondary to them finding their balance and avoiding the large gashes that were forming on the land. And then large pillar-sized roots erupted from the ground, rocketing dirt, rock, and bodies. The roots were mottled gray and white with pitch-black root hair that had to be at least 10 feet long, and thick bases that tapered into fine points, perfect for penetrating deep underground and for penetrating through flesh. And that is exactly what the roots began to do. Indiscriminately, the roots shot through the soldiers, killing them instantly. Neither blue or gray were spared. Both sides, most likely due to the monstrous roots flying around killing everything around it, turned all their focus onto shooting the sentient tubers. Unfortunately for the 19th century soldiers, their rifles weren't made to hit high-speed moving targets. And even if they did manage to hit the buzzing roots, the balls would harmlessly bounce off it. With the losses mounting, soldiers began to make mad dashes away from the field and the murderous tubers. Many soldiers were pierced from behind or crushed underneath the weight of the roots, but as the battlefield emptied, the roots began to slow in its raising. Then like needles the roots began to knit the land together, alternating between underground and above ground around the deep cuts of the earth, pulling the land back together. It was only after the last piece of land was sewn together and the last root disappeared underground that the nude soldier opened his eyes. What he opened his eyes to was the macabre sight of dead bodies pierced through and stuck on roots that had stitched the ground up as far as he could see. Distraught and terrified of what he had done, the man began to unashamedly bawl his eyes, and all anyone could do at the time was stare at the naked, dirty soldier cry. After the men had gotten over their shock and fear, a whirlwind of actions took place soon after. The Confederate soldiers fell back to New Iberia with a now distraught and naked man in chains. Upon returning to Louisiana, a multitude of accusations was levied against the naked man, and due to the nature of his crimes, it was unanimously decided by higher-ups for his trial to be as expeditiously as possible. His trial lasted less than an hour. 10 minutes was dedicated to listing his crimes, 10 to his punishment, and 30 minutes was used to spit vitriol at him. The very next day the naked soldier, now clothed in the barest rags, was led to, symbolically, the old southern live oak that was getting stronger and more vibrant, was now back to its withered, gnarled state. The prisoner, mostly catatonic throughout his imprisonment, was overcome with emotion at the sad sight, crying and yelling apologies towards the tree. Even as they tied the noose around his neck, he continued bawling. It wasn't until he was strung up and his eyes bulged and his breath was stolen that his voice was quieted, much like the trees. Over 300 years ago, one of the most important events happened. Magic was introduced to the modern world. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, small animals were chittering, and the wind was rustling leaves of trees in the woods. It was a perfect day to be outside and just enjoy what the world had to offer. Unfortunately, nature's symphony was interrupted by the heartbreaking sounds of a sobbing child. The perfect outdoor day visage was marred by the sight of a distraught and bruised child walking through the woods. The child seemed to be quite young, 4 or 5 years old by the look of it, and wore a yellow shirt with a large red M in the center of it, a pair of blue-green shorts, and a pair of bulky red sneakers. With a bushel of green hair and freckles dusting his cheeks, it wouldn't be crazy to consider the kid to be cute, even as his face is fixed in a frown with tears staining it. This little guy is Midoriya Izuku. Izuku was walking back home after a very not fun day hanging with friends in the forest. He, Bakugo, and Bakugo's 2 new friends, more like lackeys, decided to hang out and play in the forest near the park. Something Izuku is more than happy to do, especially since it gave him a chance to hang out with his increasingly aggressive and dismissive friend. But the joy of hanging out with his best friend and maybe making 2 new ones quickly turned into dread. He realized that the 3 other boys wanted to play heroes and villains, with Izuku being the civilian that needed saving all the time. When the child expressed his obvious displeasure with basically doing nothing while the other 3 got to play Bakugo, his friend had a very negative response. "Huh, what do you mean you don't want to be the damsel anymore, shitty Deku?" Bakugo said while taking a break in some shade after running around so much. "You don't want to play anymore? Well, Kakin, I didn't say that. I just want to be the hero once and actually do something for sea change." He meekly responded, not even bothering to correct Kakin on calling him a damsel. Bakugo only scowled at Izuku's response though. "Well, Deku, the reason why you can't play hero is because you can never be a hero. This isn't just playing, this is training, and quirkless losers like you have no business training to be hero," he said while getting up and poking his finger in Izuku's face. "Even those 2 losers," he jabs his thumb out to the chubby and skinny kid sitting underneath a different tree, "has a better chance than you. So just be happy that you're helping me on becoming a hero, alright?" With that he got up ready to begin training again when he heard a whining voice. "But Kakin." Itsuki glared at the green-haired child so hard that it prompted said child to sleep and step back in fear. Usually the fiery blonde would start using his quirk in anger, but in a moment of cruel clarity that 5-year-olds shouldn't possess, he came up with a better idea. "You know what, Deku, you can be the hero this time." "For real, you mean the Kakin?" Izuku said with sparkles and hope that was quickly dashed away when he saw the bone-chilling grin on the other child's face. "But the rest of us will be the villains." "But that's not going to be fair. I'm giving you a chance to be the hero and you're not going to take it. Boo. But nothing, you want to be a hero, so be a hero now, you stupid nerd." He finishes with a yell before shoving Izuku to the ground. In an odd turn of events that will become synonymous with the duo, those scalding words in a way inspired Izuku. So picking himself off the ground and with a wobbly grin said, "Bring it on, Kakin, I defeat all 3 of you villains." Finishing his statement with a shout, the Emerald Child was filled with confidence. But, as we saw earlier with the tears and the bruises, that confidence didn't do much for him. He was unceremoniously roughed up by the villain team for the next 16 minutes until they left him behind to go deeper in the forest. Which brings us to the current situation of him sobbing as he walked home because he lost his friend and friend's lackeys. While walking back on the well-treated dirt path to leave the forest, out of the corner of his eye and through the tears he spots something that will change his life, even if the thing doesn't know it yet. What the thing does know is that a human inexplicably caught and held its attention much like it caught the attention of Izuku. From his perspective, Izuku saw a slithery something hidden in the underbrush of a bush off the side of the path. It looked to be colored black and white, and if the tears aren't messing with his vision too much, he could swear that it's staring at him, something that before today would have freaked the poor child out, especially since the staring thing seemed to be slithery. He's deathly afraid of snakes. But for whatever reason he wasn't scared this time, in fact he was curious. So, as all young children do when they are curious about something, he attempted to approach it. So, as slowly as he could, he walked up to the creature and in his softest voice said, "Hello." Despite the slithery creature's interest and the boy being as non-threatening as a bunny with a bubble gun, the slithery thing still had a natural aversion to humans, so it did what all scared things do, it ran or crawled away to safety. That action spurred the little boy to chase after yelling wait and hold on, which to the smaller snake-like creature looked and sounded like a huge thing chazzing and yelling at it, which only pushed it to crawl faster, which in turn pushed the boy to chase after it faster, which in turn made the creature crawl even faster. It truly was a vicious cycle. And all of this running was truly hell on the boy's little lungs. He's active for his age, but even this was getting to be a bit much for him. But he didn't stop, or more like he couldn't stop. He had to find out what the thing was. He just has to, and he knows that if he doesn't that he will be missing something important. So, he kept jazzing, but he was fading. And right when felt like he couldn't run anymore, he ran into one of the most shocking things he had seen in his short life. He made it to a large clearing with a single large tree that seemed to be ripped from a completely different planet. The clearing was about 55 feet in diameter. All the grass was completely black, not dead, just black. The tree was the weirdest part though. It was a large oak tree, bark the same black as the grass, and had many pink and red cherry blossom petals instead of leaves. The sight by itself was beautiful, but it was disconcerting to say the least when compared to the green and browns of the forest around. The sight stopped the child dead in his tracks as the sudden environment change stole his breath and made him momentarily forget what he was chazzing. That was until he heard a deep velvety voice that shook the boy out of his awe. "Whatever got you in a rush, I promise I will let it eat you if it bothers me," the voice stated. Izuku didn't see the source of the voice in front of him, so he assumed he must be around the tree, so he walked around till he saw a lithe shirtless man sitting down at the base of the tree, reading from a book leaning on his knees, and the creature was coiled extremely tightly around the man's throat, but he didn't seem to mind. Upon seeing the two beings, Izuku immediately noticed that the man had the same color scheme as the land around him. His skin was luminescent pink all over except for his hands and his bare feet, which were black. He had long black roots and vines coming out of his scalp and past his shoulders with pink flowers blooming all over it, simulating hair. All in all, not the strangest person he has seen, living in a society of quirks and mutations easily got him used to strange people. The snake around his throat on the other hand was definitely strange for him. Most animals don't have quirks, and this certainly seemed like this one was. The little reptile, maybe 7 inches in length, had white carp scales with black flecks, 2 nubby antlers atop of its head, and an elongated snout with a whisker on each side of its face. And that weird feeling Izuku had when he first spotted the little reptilian is now less of a feeling and more like a thrum. And that thrum gets even stronger when he looks at the pink man, slightly painful even. "Did your parents never tell you that it's rude to stare, boy?" the pretty man says while not looking up from his book. "I'm sorry, didn't mean to, sir," the child said back while waving his hands. Izuku's mom did tell him not to stare at people. She also told him not to mess with wild animals, go off the forest path, and not to approach strangers, and well, he's disobeyed all those other rules. What's one more? You're still doing it, boy. "I'm sorry again, I didn't mean to. I mean I did actually, but I didn't mean to be rude. I was just I think that you..." While the boy was stumbling over his words, the pink man finally looked up from his book and fixed the child with a hard black and pink look that stopped the boy's mumbling. "Calm yourself, boy, introduce yourself and speak clearly," he said calmly. "Yes, sir. My name is Midoriya Izuku. What's your name, mister?" "I don't have a name, I lost it a long time ago." "You lost it? Is that not what I said, child?" "Yes, sorry." He didn't really understand how someone can lose a name, but he moved past it as to not upset the older man. So what should I call you then, mister?" The flowery man began. "Whatever you want, I suppose. You may name me, we won't be seeing much of each other anyhow," he thought. "Really? I don't like repeating myself, boy. Ah, right, sorry, the little boy began thinking about a name for the mysterious man when he got it. The man is pink, he has blossoms in his hair, and he is sitting underneath a tree that has cherry blossoms. The name is so obvious. I'll call you Sakura. He said, proud of himself for the great idea. Because I'm pink, a pretty man asks in a deadpan voice. Because you're pink, he replied back happily until he noticed the deadpan look he was receiving. Unless you don't like that name, I'm sorry if I made a stupid name, Mr. I thou. The man could only roll his eyes at the nervous child in front of him. He stood up to his full height of 5'11", effectively shutting the child up before saying, the name is fine, boy, and stop saying sorry so much, only weak men do that. Yes sir. Boy. I mean, forgive me, he said it like a question, hoping it was the right thing to say. It wasn't, but Sakura didn't want to deal with more nervous talking, so he ignored it. What is that you need, boy? That question reminded the boy why he was there in the first place, and he gained an excited glint in his eyes. I saw your pet snake when I was walking home, and then I followed it here, so I was wondering, can pet your snake? He finished pointing at the snake now wrapped around Sakura's arm and looking at the boy. Sakura's answer was to pluck the creature off him and hold it in the palm of his hand. This thing isn't my pet, it's a pest that has rudely decided that it will bother me ever since it met me. Oh. Sakura thought about something, looking at the creature, forming in his opinion, a fine idea. I have no say in if you can pet him, but he places the tiny reptile on the ground. If you ask him, you might just be able to. He finished with a smirk. Izuku, understanding what he needed to do, knelt down to the tiny creature and spoke as softly as he could. Hey little guy, I'm sorry about scaring you earlier, but I just wanted to meet you. The little reptile was shaking and was looking between the human child and its favorite sleeping spot before turning back and slither toward Izuku and flicked out a black forked tongue over the outstretched hand. Izuku waited with bated breath, hoping the creature would like him or at least not run away again. So, he was overjoyed when he decided to go up his hand and wrap it around his skinny arm. And with his other hand began rubbing the top of its head, eliciting a purr that was surprisingly loud from the creature. He likes me, he said, standing up and smiling at the pink man. That's a great little one, Sakura said with a small smile and knelt down to Izuku's eye. Now leave and take the pest with you, he deadpanned before leaning back on the tree, sitting down and picking his book back up. Wait, what? But I can't take, I mean. Boy, you are doing it again. Stop it before I decide to eat you, he growled out while glaring at the child. Which immediately stopped the child's racing thoughts again. What are you trying to say? Only slightly shaken from Sakura's weird threat, Izuku managed to collect his jumbled thoughts and spoke, I just wanted to play with a snake, not take him from his home. I also don't know how to get home. And what do you mean that you're going to eat me? He thought to himself with his head down and pushing his fingers together, slightly jostling the now resting creature on his arm. Firstly, Pinky started, stop calling it a snake, it's obviously a dragon. Huh. And I don't want this dragon or you around me anymore, so you can take him. It's better than the alternative. Secondly, you shouldn't wander off anywhere if you have no sense of direction. Can you go back to that first point? And thirdly, what I mean when I said I was going to eat you is exactly what I mean. Seeming like he read Izuku's mind, I'm a magical creature as well, and I eat humans like you, he finished with a large menacing smile that showed of his pearly sharp teeth. That is amazing. How was the very intelligent reply Izuku got from him. This is so cool, I have never seen anything magical, let alone two. My parents said I shouldn't be around that kind of stuff, but magic is so cool, they're like quirks, and quirks are super cool, and mom doesn't mind me being around them. Oh, I have so many questions. Why is the dragon so small? Where is its wings? What type of creature are you? How come you can talk, but he can't? Wait, can he talk? What's his name? Stop, he yelled out, putting a hand up, as if he was willing the vomit of words to stop. The combination of the moss-haired child exuberance, the twinkle in his eyes, his pinchable baby cheeks, and the excitable babble, the sight was absolutely diabetic to Sakura, and he had to put a stop to it. Did you not hear the part about me eating you? Oh yeah, I was more focused on the cool parts. Suo, are you going to eat me? He said nervously, his excitement cooling off. Sakura gave the boy a once-over before sighing, no child, I won't eat you. Too skinny, and the little pest seems to like you so. That brought the young boy's spirits right back up. Okay. So what his name, he said, lifting his arm with the now alert dragon. Doesn't have one. Can I name him? He's not mine, remember. Yes, I'm going to name you Shirakuro, Shiro for short, he said to the little reptile scratching under his chin. The reptile bobbed its head and leaned into the scratching. Shirakuro, because he's white and black. Because he's black and white, he replied back triumphantly. Sakura could only sigh again at the boy's lack of creativity. Okay, then. Well, you named him, he likes you, and I'm not going to eat you, so you can leave now and take the dragon with you. But I still can't take him, Mr. Sakura, my mom won't let me have a puppy. I'm pretty sure she won't let me bring a dragon home. I wish I could do what I really do, he's just so cool. He said, laughing lightly, as the little reptile snakes all over his body, turning Izuku all round trying to keep up with the dragon. He seemed like he would make a great friend, he said softly. The pink man could only look at the young duo before he broke a personal record for size in 5 minutes and jabbed his thumb out towards the clearing and spoke, well, Midoriya, catching the young man's attention at hearing his name for the first time from Sakura. Since you can't take the beast off my hands, the least you could do is play with the thing. Tucker him out so he doesn't bother me so much tonight. So I can stay. Did I not just, he started angrily before catching himself and the boy's doe eyes before sighing again, just crushing the record. Yes, you can stay, now go do child and pet things, so I married in peace. The boy and the dragon, now comfortably nesting in Izuku's poofy hair, looked at one, gave each other big grins, or whatever reptiles do to smile, and Izuku took off for the clearing and began doing the child and pet stuff that Sakura mentioned. Sakura was almost beginning to regret letting the child stay. Maybe because he's old or because of his lack of interactions with children of any kind, but he forgot how loud and messy children can be when they play. It was a constant stream of loud, excited whooping and running and chasing one another and roaring. So many attempted roars. I understand the dragon, but why are you doing it, you foolish little human, he thought to himself while rereading the page he was on for the third time. The dragon cried while simultaneously rolling around in the dirt, creating a black dust cloud and inspiring his new human friend to follow suit. So now there's 2 little dust balls rolling around. They sound like kittens. He thought humorously. Dragons do that to clean themselves, foolish child, you'll get sick from my dust, oh shit. Putting his book down, Sakura put his hand out, palm up, and black wood particles out of nowhere began congealing into a blobby mass. After it became the size of an apple, it stretched out into a sleek 3-foot staff. He grabbed the staff and appraised his handiwork quickly before calling to the child. Boy, he called, cutting through the youngling's fun and getting their attention. Here he tossed the staff towards the boy that immediately caught him in the face. Ouch, Izuku cried, rubbing his forehead and picking up the staff. Sorry, child. You should have been able to catch that though, he said, not sounding a bit sorry. It's getting late, your mother must be worried by now, he said as he made a show of looking at the fading sunlight. Oh my gosh. How could I not notice, mom must be crying now. But I still don't know how to get home. Stop your worrying, boy, all you have to do is hold on to the, he pointed to the sick, and walk, you will make it back to the park, you should be fine from there. Though Shiro, maybe through instinct or maybe through its limited understanding of human language, he understood that playtime with a not so scary but actually really nice boy is coming to an end and he doesn't want that. So, the little dragon wrapped his little body around the boy's ankle and gave Izuku his best puppy dragon eye look. Though Shiro, he gently pulled the creature off. I'm sorry buddy, but I have got back home, but hey, I promised to come back and play with you, only realizing what after the fact, he rushed to clarify. I see, can come back right? He asked the pink man. Sakura thought about the question for a moment, mulling over the child's unintentionally loaded question until he got an answer. As long as you have the heart for it, you can come back. Izuku fixed Sakura with the biggest smile he had all day, nodded his head, and he started running home, calling behind him and waving, bye Shiro, bye Sakura, see you later, and disappeared back into the green of the forest. The dragon whined at his friends departing and decided to slither up the tree, presumably to stew in its sadness. Sakura rolled his eyes at the sight as he went back to his book, now able to get past the page he was stuck on with no distractions. He turned the page and stopped when he saw the title of the new chapter, The Boy and His Master. You think you're hilarious, don't you, Clotho? Midoriya Inko likes to think of herself as a good parent. She cooks, she cleans, she works, she teaches Izuku good manners, and she always makes sure to spoil her baby boy within reason. Buying the young hero Otaku him all kinds of hero merchandise. And she does it all 95% by her own merits. Izuku's father, Hisashi, checks from overseas the other 5%. So, she doesn't feel like she's out of bounds to think that she's good at the hardest job in the world. But she knows that there are some deficiencies in her parenting style, 2 major ones being that she can be a worrywart at times, causing her to freak herself out at times and smother her child at others. She also hates confronting or punishing her little Izuku. It's not like she can't, but in her mind, why would she? Izuku is such a good boy. Yes, all parents believe their children to be little angels, and she believes that too, that all kids are naturally good. Yes, even potty mouth exploding Pomeranians have some good in them. But Izuku in her eyes was truly too good for this world. He always helped around the house without prompting, he does well in school, he never complains when she isn't able to get him something. Well, he did that one time when he wanted to bid for All Might's used tights. But he was understanding when she explained the dark and unhealthy version of nerdiness he was going to participate in. But what really convinced her of Izuku's virtuousness other than her bias is the fact that he always attempts to help people no matter what, even if it's to his own detriment. The world didn't give him a fair shake, but he still tries to make it better, one good deed at a time. The only consistent problem she has with him is his growing infatuations with heroes and magic. She doesn't mind that he likes heroes, what child in this society doesn't? What she isn't a fan of is Izuku actively looking for danger, so he can take notes on the responding heroes. And while she's tolerant of his interest in magical things, unfortunately many people in society aren't as understanding as her, and that can bring a whole different type of danger towards her baby. She can already hear it in the neighborhood how people's feelings are changing, never outright, always in bits and pieces and under breaths. Why is she letting him mess with that stuff? Does he not know the history he's being corrupted and she's letting it happen? He's making deals with demons for power. That's what all the quirkless do. How could someone even think of a child like that? Inko thought to herself while making her way towards her son's room. It was currently morning at the Midoriya household. And the matriarch of the household has already been up for 30 minutes getting ready for the day and cooking breakfast. Now clad in a pink fluffy robe that clings on her growing waistline and long green hair still down, she's on her way to wake Izuku up for school while wrestling with the social conundrum that has been on her mind for the past 4 years. Maybe I should put a stop to this magic and hero chasing. It can't be good for a kid his age to have these interests. It's not good for him, she thought while finally making it to the front of Izuku's door, hand on the doorknob. No, I can't think like that, immediately shaking the morose thoughts from her head. I'm not taking this from him, not this time. If this makes him happy and it's safe, I should support him. Heck, magic has had more positive changes on his life than anything else in his life. Damn the closed-minded people, and damn the consequences, and with those inspiring thoughts she pushed the door open, flipping the light switch in the room on. Hey Izuku, time too. Mama Midoriya screamed at the terrifying sight of a large white reptile coiled, peacefully sleeping on top of an equally peaceful Izuku on his bed. Or formerly peaceful, his mother's scream immediately waking up both the boy and the scaly creature. Why, what's going on, Mom, are you okay? He said with a slur in his voice, while lifting his head up to see what's going on, only to go face to face with a reptile butt. Oh, hey Shiro, what are you, Mom? Are you okay? His mom, as it turns out, was not okay. She was currently hand on chest leaning against the wall, trying to calm her heart palpitations. Izuku, deep breath. Why deep breath is the dragon deep breath here? She said. The dragon, not taken too kindly to being called a dragon, only lifted his head to dragon glare at the female Midoriya, huffed steam out of his nose, and laid back down. Inko glared back at the reptile. I don't know, Mom, I promised I didn't let him in. He must have snuck in, he said while leaning up completely to pet the back of Shiro. Again. This is the 3rd time this week, the 10th time this month, and the 60th time this year. It's starting to get out of hand, sweetie. Yeah, I guess he has been coming over a lot lately, he said, only slightly perturbed by his mom's constant count of Shiro's coming and going. I've tried being stern with him and telling him not to come so often, but he's just been so clingy lately. But don't worry, Mom, we've been over all the ways to sneak in and out, so he won't be caught by the neighbors. That's probably why he thinks it's okay to constantly sneak in, she mentally sweat dropped at her child's reassurance. I'm just worried about what will happen to us if the government finds out we have a magical creature for a pet, she replied back, causing the dragon to growl at her. You know he prefers companion, Mom, he replied. Heck knows I prefer he doesn't sneak into our apartment, but he still does. She replies back, emphasizing every he while pointing her finger at the beast. The dragon only barked in response, which sounded like a cub trying to mimic a big cat. And Inko very maturely stuck her tongue out at the creature for his obvious bad-mouthing before looking towards Izuku. It's time to wake and get ready for school, she said sweetly, then left the room, leaving his room door open. Izuku could only sweat drop at his mother's antics. Well buddy, it's time for me to get up, he said while trying to push the uncooperative 20+ pound creature off his chest. He gave up after a few moments of failing. Are you really going to do this again, he asked his best friend. His best friend turned to look at him, cutely whined, then laid his head back down. Izuku sighed at his companion before laying back down while petting him. Alright buddy, 5 more minutes. After 10 more minutes of laying down, Inko threatened to throw Shiro into a bucket of ice water. Midoriya got up, completed his hygienic routine, put on his uniform, and made his way to the kitchen where the delightful smells of fried egg and rice wafted from. Hey Mom, have you seen Shiro, he asked his mom as he sat at their small dinner table. He got his answer from the subject of the question when Shiro popped his head from underneath the table, between Izuku's legs, and laid his head on the boy's lap. "Geez Shiro, what's up with you today?" he asked while scratching the spot between Shiro's antlers, eliciting a purr from the reptile. Inko came over now dressed in a violet cardigan, blouse and jeans, and placed a bowl of fried egg on rice and a plate of fruit before sitting down with a plate of toast and coffee for herself. She happily stared at her son as he dug into his breakfast with aided akimasu and not so subtly flicking some cut strawberries into a creature awaiting its mouth and just enjoying each other's company. When she first saw Shiro, she can admit that she was, to put it mildly, absolutely terrified as hell when she first met the young beast 3 years ago. The 2-foot-long dragon was wrapped around her little boy and she freaked out and thought the worst, so she tried to beat the dragon with a broom and call the cops. Which may explain the hostilities it bears towards her today, now that she thinks about it, but after constant Izuku tears and some well-placed Midoriya better than puppy dog eyes, the 7-year-old was able to convince her to give the little reptile a chance. From that chance their relationship blossomed into what she's seen today. Yes, Shiro is annoying and lazy and he likes to hide in her oven and he is by all intents and purposes illegal, but he's definitely a positive change in Izuku's life. In both of their lives. "Are you okay, Mom?" Noticing she was caught staring, she smiled. "I'm just thinking about what a wonderful day we're going to have. Now finish eating so you can make it to school on time." Satisfied with the answer, Midoriya smiled back and went back to his meal. After eating breakfast, saying their goodbyes, and somehow getting a 5-foot-long mythical creature out of an apartment without alerting his neighbors, and then convincing said creature to go back to his own home, Izuku was well on his way towards his school. There have been a lot of changes in Midoriya's life in the past 5 years. There were the obvious changes that happened after 5 years. He got a little taller, his skin is slightly darker from being in the sun so much, he has some more freckles across his cheeks, and his hair is a lot wilder than when he was younger. He's still a beanpole though, so not much physical progress for him. Shiro on the other hand ate his Wheaties and drank his milk because he had plenty of physical growth. Not literally though, milk makes him violently sick, as Inko unfortunately had to find out personally. The little 7-inch lizard has grown into a thick, muscly, 5-foot-long serpent with 6-inch long antlers on top of his head. He also somehow grew legs. How did he do that? Izuku doesn't know, Inko doesn't want to know, and Sakura does know, but just doesn't care to tell. Simply saying dragon physiology is terrifyingly strange even to me, so now Shiro has 4 thick scaly legs with retractable claws to support his body. Comparatively, Midoriya's changes emotionally have been more significant in the same time frame. Ever since meeting Sakura and Shiro the first time in that strange clearing, the Oswald, as Sakura calls it, Izuku has been hanging out with the 2 magical creatures, playing with Shiro, and talking to Sakura, preventing him from an awkward, lonely, unhappy childhood that came with being a powerless child in a world of power. He was still an awkward child, mind you, a dragon, and a man living alone under a tree definitely wasn't going to help with that. His mother has also done some growing. The sweet and perpetually nervous Inko has recently gained an edge over her. She's still nice to people most of the time, but facing off against a fire-breathing beast, even a young one, for a few years can make anyone a little more assertive. Izuku couldn't help but grin while walking into class, thinking about all the times his mom and Shiro annoyed each other out of, he hopes, in love. He was still grinning as he sat down at his desk when a gruff voice broke him out of his musings. "Quit your stupid grinning, shitty Deku, you're making me sick," one Bakugo Kitsuki said, stomping into the classroom and spotting his least favorite person being happy. "Oh, hey Kaken," he replied quietly, mentally kicking himself for the meek response he gave. Itsuki only sucked his teeth before stomping to his desk that happens to be behind Izuku. Kaken has also done some growing as well. His personality has gotten more explosive, his quirk is more explosive, and he blew up in height. Compared to every other boy in their grade, Kitsuki is the tallest because of course he is, he's genius at everything else, why not be one in puberty as well? At least that's one thing that hasn't changed, he thought humorlessly. "Alright," the teacher said, stepping in a minute after Kitsuki sat down, "time to begin," and that's exactly what they did. Class for the most part was going smooth for the emerald hair child. He was understanding what the teachers were saying. He got to learn about the history of vigilantes in hero society. It was terribly biased, but what would you expect, and so far he's able to manage his muttering. School was going pretty good for the boy, so of course something had to ruin his better than average day. He felt it building up sometime around the end of his lunch break. He felt a familiar type of heat pooling in his stomach that he attributed to indigestion. He's always had a problem with eating his food too fast, but he soon figured out that it wasn't the case. It was while he was taking notes, as his English teacher droned on about punctuation, when it all came to a head. As he glanced up from his notes to see what the teacher had to say, just out of the corner of his eye, caught a glimpse of what, unfortunately, explained the fire in his gut. No, what is he doing? What is he doing? He knows he shouldn't be here. The bushy-haired boy broke out in a sweat. He can't be here. He knows he can't, so why is he here? Maybe it's Sakura. Maybe it's Sakura. It's not Sakura. Sakura would rather talk to a Frenchman about wine at an Olive Garden than leave his tree. Wait, if he doesn't like leaving his tree, how does he know about an American franchise that went out of business 70 years ago? Does that mean he left it before? Was he always bound to the tree? Wait, I'm getting distracted from the more important, terrifying, awful, detrimental, scary. Shut the fuck up, you stupid nerd, the young bomberman roared while viciously kicking the back of the nerd's chair, effectively ending the mumbling spree. And I heard you was doing so well today, Mr. Midoriya, the teacher said, with the least amount interest a human could muster, and Bakugo, please refrain from cursing. Got him to shut up, and he shot back with contempt. The teacher, obviously too used to the blonde's attitude, simply ignored him. What got you so tizzy this time, he asked Midoriya. Nothing, sir, his squeaky response garnering some muffled chuckles from his classmates. Are you sure you're okay? You're sweating more than usual. It was this moment that Shiro poked his head right in front of the window, stuck his tongue out cutely before leaping up and out of sight. I'm not fine, he said, now sweating even more noticeably, thankful that everybody else in the class was too focused on him being an awkward mess. Are you or are you not fine? I'm not fine. Would you like a bathroom pass, Midoriya? Yes, I would. Well, I don't have any more. Can I still go to the bathroom? With a roll of his eyes, the teacher sighed out, yes, I guess you can. Thank you, sir. He then quickly got out of his seat and power walked his way out of class to the silent laughter of the class and one heated glare from a pair of red eyes. A few minutes later found the boy in the dingy three-stall boys' bathroom. Shiro, come on buddy, I know you can hear me, Midoriya stage whispered, now hoping his companion would show up. Come on, I know you're around here, my stomach feels like an oven. As soon as the oven left his mouth, that's when the pale beast popped out of the fluorescent light above and fell right on top of the boy and immediately wrapped his large body around the skinny child. Shiro. How did you even, you know what, never mind, why are you here and why are you so cold? He finished his questioning with a worried whisper. His reptilian friend only whined and snuggled his snout underneath Izuku's chin while somehow avoiding poking his human friend in the eye with his antlers. Hey, it's okay buddy, I got you. After some creative thinking, some cooing, and strength he didn't know he had, he was able to get him and the dragon into a stall away from potential prying eyes. And for some time now he has just been in the stall on the toilet with Shiro wrapped around him, class all, but forgotten, constantly petting his head right between his antlers, the creature slightly shivering still. Are you feeling better? Shiro whined and coiled tighter. This couldn't have just come out of nowhere, he must have been sick for a while. Is this why he's been so clingy lately? Maybe I can put him in the sink and run some hot water over him. Deku? You in here, a familiar voice yelled out, making the companions nearly jump out of the stall. What are you doing here? You were taking too long in the bathroom, so I was told to check on you and make sure you didn't shit yourself to death or fall into the toilet again, he glowered. So are you dead or stuck in the toilet? Because if you are, I promise I will blow you to kingdom come. Shiro did not take kindly to the blonde's threat and began growling until Izuku grabbed his mouth while giving him the universal sign for shush. I'm fine Kaken, just feeling a little sick, haha. Bullshit. Huh. Don't hug me, I said that's bullshit, you're paranoid for some reason. I'm always paranoid though. You're more paranoid than usual, he shot back through clenched teeth, and you suck at lying. Now I'm going to give you till the count of 3 before I break this door down. But if you do that, wouldn't that go on your personal record, he said, hoping he could appeal to one of Bakugo's only fears, a stain on his record and potential pitfall for his dream of becoming a hero. 3. I'm coming through this door right now, he said, exploding out of the stall sans dragon and breathing heavy. You're sweating like a whore. Well, you know I was feeling sick. I said cut the crap, you saw something outside that made you sweat, started mumbling something about he shouldn't be here, and then ran to the bathroom. Now tell me what you saw, or, he pushed the smaller boy towards the sinks, before lighting his hand up with the crackles of his quirk. I'm going to beat it out of you, he accentuated the threat by creating a small explosion between his palm and fist. Kaken, why are you always observant of me? Why do you want to know so bad? Because I do, now tell me you little shit, he said, taking a menacing step towards the boy. Waving his hands and trying to appear as submissive as he can be. Kaken, I promise you it's nothing that you have to be worried about, I promise. That was the incorrect statement to make for little Izuku. After those dreaded words left the greenhead's mouth, Midoriya found himself being roughly grabbed by his collar and exploded towards the water heater and window on the far side of the door and only potential escape. Izuku was still reeling from the flash and shock of Bakugo's quirk when felt and smelled Bakugo on him. He smelled like nitroglycerin, like his quirk, sickeningly sweet. I am not worried about you. I am never worried about you, but apparently I haven't made that clear to you, he said with some venom. Left hand picking Midoriya up from the floor once again from the collar, and right hand open hovering dangerously close to Izuku's face ready to ignite and send him into a world of pain. But that would have been fine, not great, but fine, normal. It's normal for the shy boy to be bullied by his ex. It's normal for Bakugo to yell and curse at him every day. It's normal for him to get bruises and burns from Kaken. It's normal, he expects it, and he's used to it. Shiro is not used to seeing him get bullied, cursed out, and burned, and he absolutely didn't tolerate it. And Izuku knew this from past experiences, so he felt what was going to happen before he even saw it, but it was already too late. Shiro was pissed, and he was going to tell Kitsuki how pissed he was in the worst possible way. Like in slow motion, Izuku saw Shiro crawling from underneath the middle stall behind Kitsuki, raised himself on his haunches, towering over the kneeling boy, and heat began building in his mouth, flames flickering out from between his clenched fangs. This wasn't like last time. Shiro was more than pissed. He's going to. Pack and move. Maybe because of the sheer desperation in Izuku's voice, or the fact his would-be victim completely blanched at something that was behind, or maybe the natural instinct he's been graced with, but Kitsuki immediately heeded the warning and threw his body to the left so hard he went underneath the third stall door, hitting his head while sliding, and just in time too. Seconds after he moved, Shiro with a whoosh and a boom, bathed the wall, floor, and Izuku in retina, searing white flames that melted floor tiles into sludge and cracked the wall and melted the heater behind him. The heat surrounding the ball of flame even began warping the exposed piping of the sinks and the stall doors. Anything caught in the fire should be killed immediately, or at least in excruciating, debilitating pain. Unless you're one Midoriya Izuku, then you stumble out of the fire with only some red skin, ruined pants, and a halter-top version of a school uniform. Oh, thank God I'm resistant to his flames, but that was cutting it close, the greenhead thought to himself, while sucking in as much air as possible. What the heck, Shiro? You could have killed Kaken. He screamed at the creature, then he noticed the bowed head and the lack of luster the scales his friend had. And shivering, Shiro was shaking even worse than he was before, despite the bonfire burning a few feet away. You shouldn't have done that, buddy. You can't be wasting your breath on someone who is dangerous, but not a bad guy, and especially not to harm someone like that. He said, his soft chastising laced with concern for his friend. You're sick enough as it is. I should check on Kaken and try to explain what's going on. Maybe he will be understanding and not want to kill me and Shiro. He thought, nervously turning around facing the already dissipating flames. Good thing his flames burn out so quickly. Kaken, are you okay? No answer from the stall. Kaken, are you there? He couldn't have gotten hurt, kitty. He did go through that door pretty hard. By now the flames have burned down to flickers, leaving a section of linoleum sludge where it burned. The heat has mostly died down now, so it's mostly safe to come out. Just step lightly, the floor is kind of unmelted. The stall was kicked open, and one scowling Bakugo Kitsuki walked out. Deku, what the fucking shit, this hot? Fuck. Kitsuki quickly high-stepped off the hot floor, every fuck accentuating every step. Fuck, that was hot. Are you oh? Shut the fuck up. What are you doing with that thing? He points at Shiro, who hissed at the blonde's obvious hostilities towards it. Izuku took a deep breath, preparing himself physically and mentally for the winding tale he's about to tell. Well, it's kind of a long story, but I need you to promise me to listen and not attack Shiro. The look of incredulous passed on Bakugo's face before he settled back into his scowl. I can't fucking believe it. I knew you were desperate, but to do this, he once again gestured towards the creature, earning an even sharper hiss from the sick creature. You were just inside a fireball, and you look like you just got a fucking sunburn. Try explaining that to me. But I already have a good understanding of what you have done. And make it quick, my patience is already very thin, he spat out. Izuku took one more deep breath, then he was off to the races. He's my friend. I met him when I was younger, when I got lost in the forest where we used to play, and met this man, and Shiro. We all kind of became friends, and over time some dangerous things happened between us. That wasn't completely his fault, because he's just a whelp, which is a young dragon, and he is still young. And he's really protective of me, so he sometimes do dangerous things, which is why he tried to hurt you, but he's not going to do that anymore, right Shiro? Right, but yeah, he's young and a dragon, so that man kind of blessed me to not be affected in any way by Shiro's breath, among other things, to keep me safe, finishing his very abridged, very quick retelling of how he met Shiro. Omitting some obvious details, out of breath. Bakugo had some trouble following the speed taking, but he was able to glean the info that he needed from the avalanche of words. So, you actually managed to find some shitty magician to curse your shitty ass. Well, no, that's not what I. Are you stupid? There is no such thing as blessings in magic. He interrupted the smaller boy's correction. This is why your dumbus hasn't grown up yet, isn't it? stalking heroes, and talking about going to UA thinking you can compete with me. You have been relying on some weirdo's magic to get powers. None of that is true. And despite who he was talking to, he found himself growing angry at the accusations. It was just for my safety, I would never use them like that. So, you let them use you then. They don't use me either. Did you even think about what kind of danger you're putting Auntie in? What would happen to her if you got caught? By now he had made his way in front of Izuku and was yelling in his face. To his credit, Izuku barely flinched to Kitsuki's volume or the implication. Of course, I have. I always do, every day. And she's aware of them too. That fact caused Bakugo's eyes to widen slightly before they snapped back into the scowl. That's why you can't tell anyone about him, please Kaken. Kaken studied his former friend, all bones and green hair. He was scared Kitsuki knew that, but he was passionate about the dragon. He could see that on his face. He could also see from the constant clenching and unclenching of his fists that he was willing to do something drastic, something Kitsuki might have been able to respect if it wasn't Deku. He then glanced at the pale dragon behind the boy. In that moment in time, Bakugo wanted nothing more than to crush the boy and his pet with all his might. But a quieter, calmer voice was nagging him, tickling his cerebral cortex. Hey, maybe don't. Within moments he was having an internal conflict with this new voice of compassion that in his head seemed to last for minutes but was only 20 seconds as he cursed out the soft voice until he decided on a compromise. He won't kill the little nerd, but the dragon that attempted to murder him wasn't going to be afforded such grace, and if said little nerd decided to get in his way, then he would blow him up too, but just lighter. Something the little voice expressed distaste in. But the new voice of his superego could only do so much against Kitsuki's id. Kitsuki fixed Midoriya with a hard gaze before speaking, fine, but I'm taking care of your magic problem now. Move. Midoriya briefly looked confused before understanding, then horror came across his face. You can't do that, you promised. I didn't promise shit. He once again cut Midoriya off. Trust me Deku, this is for your own good. Midoriya could only stare for a few seconds as his mind raced a million miles a minute as he tried to think of something to say to the blonde that could convince him to not attack. He had no belief that if it got physical in any form that Kitsuki would dominate him, as he always does. And Shiro, despite being a mythical fire-breathing creature, is young, sick, not as much of a beast compared to a determined Bakugo. And ultimately, he doesn't want to see them fight, he admires them too much. So, he did what he always has done when Kitsuki tried to bully somebody. Taking 2 steps back, green eyes never leaving red, as he splayed his arms like a goalie. Izuku looked like he was about to cry, and he just might, but he wasn't going to move. Bakugo knew that from experience. But that suited the explosive child just fine. I'm going to give you to the count of 3. 1. Shiro's instinct to protect Izuku flared, alarm bells ringing in his head, so with a mewl of discomfort, got back on all fours and began building another ball of flames in his mouth, ignoring the pain in his head and the cold in his gut, ready and willing to do anything to protect his friend. 2. Izuku closed his eyes and waited for the inevitable blow. He knows that it would be safer for him to just let it happen, but what kind of friend would he be if he sacrificed him just to make his life easier? No, Shiro has never abandoned him, and he will never abandon Shiro. 3. Bakugo snarled and launched himself towards the duo, ready to blow the boy and his pet dragon up. And despite how hostile he was, he did truly believe what he said, that this is the best for everybody involved. Magic has always been the problem throughout history, and magic has always preyed on the weak and foolish like Midoriya. So, he's going to destroy the problem before it becomes a big problem, because that's what heroes do, they take care of problems. 4. No one expected what came next, as the room suddenly filled with flames that engulfed all the inhabitants. The spontaneity of it caused an explosion that rocked the school and sent many students into a panic. A wonderful way to end a wonderful day. The first sensation Midoriya felt when he regained semi-consciousness was cold. It wasn't any type of cold either, it was a type of cold that would have put the winds of hell to shame. It was like the coldest rivers the world has to offer were funneled straight from the coldest sources and right down his throat. His stomach, usually filled with the warmth of Shiro's close proximity, was all but replaced with the heavy frost that must be building in his abdomen, snuffing out any warmth that was previously present. It was so cold and it was so painful, and it just kept getting worse and worse. Even the simple act of breathing racked his body with chills and pain that his young mind couldn't comprehend nor handle. It's so cold, it's so cold, it's so cold, it's so cold. Like a mantra, he repeated those 3 words for what felt like hours, with no sense of what he could do, if he could do anything. All he saw was darkness, his eyelids refusing to open. His limbs following suit, couldn't move either. Even if he could though, movement in his state of anguish would surely send him back into oblivion. And with the realization that other than his labored breathing and his ability to think, all his other faculties were useless, his thoughts went into a miserable panic. Why can't I open my eyes? Why can't I hear anything? Why can't I move? Why? Why is this happening to me? This is horrible. How did this happen to me? Am I really awake? Am I actually alive? It was after the third hour of pain-derived existentialism Izuku came to one final question seemingly out of nowhere that froze him colder than he already was. Is this how Shiro feels? When Izuku finally came to, he was assaulted by the harsh scent of alcohol and gauze. When he managed to peel his eyes open, he saw that he was in an unfortunately familiar sight, the nurse's office. He was currently laying down on a stiff bed, shirtless, both arms covered in gauze up to the elbow, and a damp towel was placed on his forehead. His skin felt clammy, his eyes were unfocused, and according to his bandages his arms were injured. Despite those ailments he felt relatively fine. Only thing bothering him is the cold. It isn't like the debilitating cold that he felt in his faux consciousness, it's more like ice cubes in his stomach compared to the raging blizzard earlier. It wasn't as bad, but it was definitely making its presence felt. At this moment Izuku couldn't see anything else in the room due to the privacy sheet blocking his view of everything else but his bag and folded shirt on a chair. Someone must have brought it. But he assumed somebody else was in the room or at least near the room, judging by the muffled voices he heard. He laid there for some minutes wondering what was going when he decided to attempt to swing his legs off the bed. Keyword attempted. His legs gave out almost immediately after his bare foot contacted the floor, making him fall to his hands and knees and cry out. A sheen of sweat started forming on his body as he pushed himself off the floor. Hello, he mentally recoiled at the scratchiness of his voice, it sounded like he hasn't spoken in weeks, is somebody here? The voices continued, as if they didn't hear him. So, he decided to take initiative and pull the partition away. Is anyone okaken? When he pulled the sheets away, he saw the expected sterile walls and the cabinet filled with various antiseptics and medicine. He wasn't expecting the explosive blonde filling in the second bed by the door with a tightly wrapped gauze on his right foot. The blonde was lying down, eyes expressly pointed to the corner of the room opposite of where Izuku is standing. He also seemed to be trying to listen to the frantic voices that are now obviously outside of the room. Without even looking from the corner he began speaking, "Be quiet. I'm trying to listen," he said. Only a few moments of silence passed before Izuku's nature got the best of him. "Are you okay? What happened to your leg?" The Kugo's face muscles visibly twitched at the question, but otherwise he still refused to look at Izuku. "You don't remember what happened in the bathroom with the shitty pet?" he asked. As he was about to answer, a rush of memories of him and Bakugo arguing before being set ablaze in the bathroom flash across his mind. Oh my god. How did you The poor boy had so many questions that he stammered for at least 30 seconds before he began feeling a little faint. He sat back down on his bed before asking the most pertinent one. "What happened there? How did we get out of there?" he finally asked. Itsuki's body stiffened, his arm flexed hard enough to see the burgeoning muscles through his button-up shirt. He opened and closed his mouth multiple times, carefully thinking about the next words to come out of his mouth. Seeing his bully's normal directness wasn't present at the moment, Midoriya decided to prompt him, asking, "Did Shiro get us out?" Itsuki finally turned around to face Deku with a scowl on his face. "Your stupid pet is part of the reason why we were both in the nurse's office now." Some of that fire of his now returning as he spoke. But as quickly as it returned, it disappeared just as fast as he continued saying, "You did." A chill washed over Izuku as his breath hitched. What does he mean by that? What does he mean? What does he mean? What do you mean by that, Kaken? A nervous chuckle bubbled up from his throat. "How could I?" "Shut your mouth and I'll tell you," the blonde interrupted with a growl and a glower towards the boy. Midoriya promptly closed his mouth so hard his teeth audibly clacked against each other. Glaring for a few more seconds, making sure the thin child didn't speak again. "After your shitty ass decided to protect your stupid pet, I ran to you to help you see the errors of dealing with magic. You remember that much, right?" While he wouldn't agree with the descriptors and all the details, for the most part that is what he remembers. Midoriya gave a tiny nod in affirmation. "Good. So, when I used my quirk, that's when the explosion happened, and before you even come to a stupid conclusion, I didn't accidentally cause the explosion," he said, preemptively cutting off any Midoriya interjection. "I wasn't going to say anything though. But your quirk is explosive sweat." The bathroom exploded. It wouldn't be a huge logical leap, the boy thought, but not verbally expressed because he has some sense of self-preservation at the moment. The Kugo continued unaware of any of Izuku's thoughts. "When we were in the bathroom the air felt heavier there. At first I thought it was just the heat from that stupid thing trying to melt me." His eyes narrowed as he mentioned his near-death experience and Izuku had the decency to look bashful. "But considering we almost died when I activated my quirk, I believe that your stupid pet left some type of accelerant or something like that in the air after he breathed fire." An accelerant left in the air, that's impossible. I mean, it should be impossible. I guess it could happen. For a while I was learning something new every day about Shiro. Unfortunate timing for something new to appear though. And, as strong as Kaken is, he wouldn't be able to destroy the whole bathroom, at least not without some help. Wait, doesn't that mean he at least played a part in it? And judging from that dopey look on your face, I'm guessing you didn't know anything about that, huh? Izuku numbly nodded his head. TCH, of course you didn't. The boy then fell silent again. It was another pregnant pause, the only sound coming from the muffled voices in the hallway. What happened next? Izuku prompted. That's when shit got really weird. He almost shouted out. And like he was taking a page from the green-haired mumbler himself, he couldn't help but just talk. The fire ignited in front of me, and I was sure I was fucked, but then you turned white, and not that pussy white you get when I or a girl try to talk to you either, but literally golden white. Izuku tried asking what he means by that. But Kitsuki just continued on. Your skin turned white, your hair, your eyes. Then you did this thing like, he cupped his left hand around his lips like he was about to whisper a secret, then made a sucking sound, and you sucked all the fire up, all of them, even the ones that I know caught my body. The ones that were burning me. A wide-eyed, almost feral look appeared on his face. It was, and, as if a trance was lifted and he realized who he was talking to, his eyes narrowed. It was weird. He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. You were able to get the majority of it out of the room and out of me, except for my foot. Then you passed out, turned back to normal. I dragged you out, then the shitty teachers dragged us here. Another stab of cold went through the green boy's stomach at the end of Bakugo's story. Another bout of grim curiosity washed over him, so many questions ran in his mind. Does that mean? What does this mean? That could just be a part of his blessing, or maybe so. I became white and sucked up the flames. Bakugo fixed the green-haired boy with a look that said, that's all. But actually, you're going to tell me you didn't know you could do that too? Yay. Of course, he sighed and rubbed his face. They couldn't have picked a better idiot to curse. No one cursed me. Whatever, Deku. Another round of silence. The cold in Midoriya's gut was now radiating up to his chest and up his neck, leading to some uncomfortableness. The lack of distraction makes the feeling even worse. Seemingly tired of the quiet as well, Bakugo started speaking again. Right now, those losers out there arguing are losing their minds right now, worrying about how bad they're going to get sued for letting a dragon in. Izuku's heart almost leaped out of his chest at the statement. They know, he squeaked. Did you tell them about Shiro and me? The blonde clicked his teeth at the question and growled out, no, I didn't. I told them a dragon attacked, and that's it. Midoriya took an easy breath. Thank you, Kaken. Bakugo bristled at the gratitude. I didn't tell because of Auntie. Just because her son is some desperate idiot that sold his soul for some magic doesn't mean she should get punished. She tried her best with what she got. The words cut deep into Izuku, reminding him of the unintentional pain he has caused his mom by just being quirkless in a quirk-driven world, and the sacrifices she made just keep his dragon a secret. Still, thank you. He grabbed his chest and scrunched his eyes in pain as the cold from earlier intensified, almost comparable to the frost in his sleep. The pain that followed wasn't any better. He saw bright spots as he tried to recover, then he saw pink, then red, then white and black. Then the pain rescinded to a more tolerable thumping in his chest. Beads of sweat formed on his body despite the chill he felt. Bakugo almost looked worried. Kaken, what happened to Shiro after the flames? He asked suddenly. I don't know, he must have disappeared during your whole transformation thing. What the hell are you doing? He asked. Midoriya quickly put on his tattered uniform and shoes, grabbed his bag, then approached and opened the window, then swung his legs over the sill. I have to find Shiro now. Izuku got an angry, dumbfounded look from the explosive preteen. Are you serious? You're going to cause more trouble for everybody here. You do that, including your mom. The smaller boy winced at the observation. She will understand, but I have to help him, he's dying. I can feel it, so I have to go. He clicked his teeth again. I would suggest letting the deadly creature just die, but you won't, so do what you want, Deku. He then turned away again. He could only solemnly nod and was about to leave when he was stopped by Katsuki calling him out. Deku? Izuku looked. Soft green eyes met intense red ones. Don't think just because you have magic now that you're any better than before. I'll still crush you any time of the week. Wouldn't dream of it. He then leaped off the sill, leaving Kaken alone in the room with only the sounds of arguing adults to keep him company. In a clearing of black land with a single black oak tree with pink and red cherry blossoms stood a man, a pink and obsidian skin man with roots for hair, the formerly nameless magical creature Sakura. He hasn't changed much in the last 5 years. He hasn't changed much at all throughout his lifetime. The only differences are the red streaks on his back. They looked as if some had given him 15 lashes. Fortunately for him though, his grown out hair, the other change, mostly covers the marks. Underneath the foliage, surrounded by piles of books and notepad, Sakura was furiously scribbling and reading books at speed no Einstein could ever hope to achieve, all while mumbling under his breath, "I was supposed to have more time, it was supposed to happen when arg, damn it." He threw the useless book away from into an awaiting pile of similarly useless books. "Damn it boy, damn it Clotho." 5 years earlier. 3 days in a row, I'm impressed, Sakura said to the little green boy with a stick, busting through the shrubbery into his clearing, without looking up from his book. "Why is it impressive that I make it back here, Sakura?" Little Izuku asked the creature while flicking some stray leaves stuck to his clothes. "You'd be surprised how many men have tried and failed coming here. Why did people want to come here? Was it to hang out with you too?" The pink man gave the innocent child a blank face as he answered, "Something like that." Satisfied with the answer, the little boy went over and sat down beside Sakura. "Where is Shiro?" "HMPH, the little pest is probably out and about being a general annoyance, terrorizing a bunny or something. Don't worry though, I'm sure he is slithering his way over now since you're here." "Okay, Suo." He pulls out a notebook with a cute cartoon drawing of a Chinese dragon on the cover. "Does that mean I can ask some more questions now?" He beamed at the taller man while holding the book out. Sakura rolled his eyes at the child's enthusiasm, but he put his book down all the same. "I will answer 3 questions today." Since none of Izuku's questions were answered the first time they met, Izuku has taken to writing down and asking Sakura whatever his young mind can come up with about magic. And because Midoriya is a naturally curious boy that always has 1,000,001 question, unnaturally curious Sakura would tell him later, he was only permitted a certain number of questions by Sakura. If Midoriya had no hard cap to his quest, the magical creature probably would have lost it and fulfilled his earlier threat of eating the boy. "Only 3, did Shiro bother you again this morning?" the boy asked, trying to guess the reason for the small number. "The creature always bothers me. No, just don't feel like answering many questions today." The boy briefly pouted but quickly brought back his smile. "Okay." He flipped his notebook to somewhere in the middle of it, briefly flashing how many of the pages were filled. Sakura cocked his eyebrow at that. "Mudeus, in such a short amount of time, that's almost impressive. My first question is, how come you can talk, but Shiro can't?" "Because I'm sentient, he's not." "Next question," he answered quickly. "Sakura. Come on, that's barely an answer." He whined. Sakura sighed. Okay, fine." The full answer is he held his tongue, joyfully watching as the boy vibrated in anticipation of the answer. "Because I can." "Next question." The child visibly deflated as the adult chuckled at him. "Fine." Izuku flipped some more pages and hesitated on a certain question before flipping again. "Never be afraid to ask questions, boy," Sakura simply stated, making the look up. He nodded, then turned back to the previous page. "Why do I have to keep them by myself whenever I come over?" Sakura could barely hear the little boy's whispering, but he caught the gist of it. "It's for your safety, the dust around here can make you sick, this prevents that from happening." No sense in worrying the poor child to death, he thought, smoothly lying about the severity of the air around. But the look in the child's eye told him there was more to the question. "Why did you ask that question?" The little boy looked as if he was going to try to avoid the question, but stopped as Sakura fixed him with his intense pink and black eyes, making him squirm. The boy has only known the pink man for a few days, normally not enough time to get a good read on someone, but he got the feeling the man wants him to be honest with him all the time and to be more confident as well. "Well, it's hard to play with Shiro while holding the staff, but I didn't want to ask about it because I know you made it for me and I didn't want to be rude," he exclaimed, hurrying the last few words out. Sakura wanted to chastise the boy for worrying over something so stupid, but reined it as he remembered he's a child and a nervous one at that. "I guess it would be difficult to run around with a staff in your hand." He gestured for the boy to hand the staff over, which Izuku did. Holding the in one hand and the other, black sticky liquid pooled and bubbled in his hand that solidified and formed a small root. He then broke the staff into pieces, earning a gasp from the child, then took the smallest piece and the root and tied it to the boy's wrist like a strange bracelet. "They are better for you. You shouldn't feel wrong for asking somebody to correct a mistake, child." "Ah, boo, but I didn't say it was a mistake." "But it was. I asked you to play with a dragon, but I gave you something that hindered you in doing that. I'm going to have to get used to doing things for small human children if you are to continue coming back here." Izuku couldn't help but feel light after that and showed it on his face. "Stop smiling, I will still eat if I get hungry." "Last question," he said without any kind of bite. Izuku nodded, then flipped through his notebook stuffed with questions. Once again, he spotted and hesitated on a certain question, but pushed through his fear and asked anyway, "Why were you alone?" Sakura mulled over the question for a moment, thinking about how he's going to explain his complicated, sordid history that has led him to be a hermit under a tree today. It would be hard for him to tell his story to an adult without scaring them for life, let alone a child. I had an obligation from the world and to myself to be alone. An what? I feel the need to be alone. And the universe in its own way thought the same, he clarified. I don't understand, he admitted. Maybe this will help you understand why you followed Shiro and approached me in the first place. Now it was Midoriya's turn to think about a question for a moment. And his eyes widened in realization. I had a feeling that I had to, or I'll be missing something important. That I needed to. I had an Obligat yawn. I had an obligation. Did you know that already? Maybe, he shrugged. Shiro is back, he nodded to the brush, as it Shiro bursts though with a big for him rock in his mouth. Midoriya hurriedly put his book away and got up. Thanks for answering my question, Sakura. The pink man nodded and went back to his book. You're welcome, boy, now go entertain the pest. And Izuku turned to leave, but then turned back suddenly and asked, is obligation a good thing? I only remember 3 questions today. Sakura threw another book into the useless pile and snarled, I have to figure this out today, I have to, if not for me then for him. He then cracked open another time and began reading it. It's unnerving how easy it is for people to ignore a kid bandaged and in tattered clothes in the streets, and exasperated, Izuku thought. For the past 10 minutes the very unathletic boy has been running to his childhood playground, the entrance to the forest, and the opaque world. Then again, that might just be me, he said to himself as he made it to the playground and walked to the same path he has been taking since he was littler. He was taking deep gulps of air, trying to gain control of his breath. As he finally calmed his heart rate, he pulled out his little wrist out of his school bag, veered hard right off the path and into the brush. Sakura has never explicitly said that the Suljan is the key to making it to and from Oswald. But he has never explicitly said that it isn't, so Izuku puts it on whenever he goes, it just feels right to him. Okay, it takes me roughly 5 or 6 minutes to get to the clearing if I walk, so if I sprint it should take maybe 3 to get there, and then I can ask Sakura what to do about Shiro, and then he took off running. 3 minutes passed and the boy were still running, but he didn't worry, I probably just overestimated my speed, I need to run more often. 7 minutes later he was still running and was beginning to get worried, maybe I took a wrong turn. Wait, that can't be it, I could literally walk anywhere in the forest and still end up at the clearing, my chest hurts. Then more minutes and no magical looking clearing or pink skinned tree hobo in sight. And Izuku's mounting frustration came to a head as he stopped running. At that point it was more like feet shuffling with gusto, and vocalized his ire. What's going on? Why now, out of all the times I walk to Opacwald, this is the time that it doesn't work. Tears started prickling his eyes. I have to help Shiro and I need Sakura's help to do that. He closed his eyes, squeezing out a tear, lifted his head and yelled, I need to get into Oswald now. Why won't you let me in? He didn't know who he was yelling at. Maybe at the woods for preventing him from going to the normally accessible clearing, maybe at the universe for making this currently one of his more nightmarish and confusing days. He rubbed his eyes with his forearm, clearing the tears, and opened his eyes to a familiar colorway, black and pink. Black and pink everywhere, what the? Izuku breathed out as he took in the new environment around him. Blackened bark was all around him, tree branches of varying lengths sprouted various types of pink fruit, flowers, and leaves. Pink leaves, pinnacones, apples, oranges, would they be called pinks now, and hydrangeas, and more. The land was mottled pink and black, while the smaller plant life like grass and bushes were all ash black. The strangest thing though to him was the dimness. It looked like the world had its brightness turned down, which is strange because he can clearly see the sun shining brightly above. It's almost like the sunlight was just being reflected or absorbed. It's like the forest was opaque. I'm in the opaque forest, the boy concluded. Oh my god, I'm in the Opacwald. He screamed to the heavens. Oswald was an actual forest, of course it's in forest. Sakura doesn't just idle things just for the sake of it. He hates flowery languages. The Opacwald like a different world. Does this prove the magic world theory? If it does, how have I been coming here, or at least a piece of here, for so long? How did I come here the first time? A portal, eh? Rift. How did I get to the actual forest? Did I do something different? Is today a magic day? Any and all thoughts and mumbling were put on hold as another bout of iciness racked his body with pain, forcing him to his knees and clutching his chest. He doesn't know how long he was kneeled in pain for, but it was some time. His body shivered as he took some steadying breaths. Right, theorizing can be done later. I'm here now. He picked himself up to get Sakura and help Shiro. He looked around, now I have to find him. Left with nothing to do, Izuku guessed a direction to go, north in this case, and took off again. It wasn't even 3 minutes of jogging that the green-haired boy was soaked in sweat, his hair starting to stick to his forehead and his pants becoming uncomfortably damp with the fluid. Luckily, he didn't have to deal with an uncomfortably wet shirt. So, he made the wise decision of just walking lest he passed out from dehydration. But, as he finally slowed down physically, that allowed his mind to race. Well, raced faster than usual, as he thought about Bakugo's story, mainly about his apparent heroic magical act in the bathroom. If what he said was true, and he had no reason to lie or overstate what happened back there, then that would mean Sakura was wrong, or at least mostly wrong. He took a few more steps when a traitorous thought entered his mind. What if he lied to me? He instantly felt bad about it and wanted to shake it off, but his more pragmatic side stopped him. He's a million-year-old magical creature that has been right about everything else concerning magic. He can sense Shiro wherever he's at because of the magic within him. He couldn't make the mistake of telling me that I have no magic. He thought, but why would he? An unhappy memory drummed up the boy's mind, an argument he had with Sakura, one of the few times he was truly mad at his friend. I shouldn't want to be a hero so bad. No, he's not some petty person, he may have just made a mistake, even an old powerful magical creature can make mistakes, right? He thought, trying to convince himself. Meanwhile, 20 meters away from the boy's track, a resting creature lifted its head at the unfamiliar but tantalizing scent. With great effort, the humanoid beast lifted his considerable girth onto his tree trunk legs, sniffing the air once, then staggered away from his spot. He took only a few steps when his cloudy pale eyes spotted something green in the sea of black trees. It sniffed again, and its large maw began filling with saliva, and it made its move. Izuku was still deep in thought, lips moving at unnatural speeds, as his mumbling tick took over when felt the ground rumble. He turned around and locked eyes with one of the most terrifying sights he has ever seen in his short life. The 10-foot-tall, obese black and blue-skinned humanoid monster, with the face of a heavily scarred stylized dragon with tusks jutting out of its mouth and a busted helmet of sorts on its head. That wasn't the worst part, no, the worst part was that it was running at him naked, not even a loincloth. Obviously, the angry-looking beast charging at him was enough incentive to run, but the huge jiggling genitals definitely gave him that extra push. The creature, seeing his prey, started running, and it doubled its efforts to catch the boy. What is that? What is that? What is that? The boy could only think of that single question as he focused on sprinting away from the naked beast and not tripping over the numerous roots and rocks. While not the most fleet of foot, the boy was smaller and consequently faster than his pursuer and able to avoid the obstacles in his path easier than the uncomfortably male monster after him. But what the beast lacks in agility he makes up in strides and strength. One of his steps is 6 of Midoriya's, and while Izuku must be careful of his steps, the blue naked meanie simply stepped on and crushed the rocks and roots in his way and headbutted any low-hanging branches into oblivion. Izuku, gasping for air, chanced to glance back and almost fell sick at the sight. The creature's rolls were bouncing up and down into another with enough force that the weird milk-colored sweat would splash off it as rolls collided. Drool kept flying out of its mouth and its eyes began secreting some jelly-like substance. The heat in his stomach returned momentarily, if only to warn him that he's going to spew his lunch if he keeps looking. At least it doesn't smell that bad, kind of like wet soil. Wait, no way this thing smells that good. Crap, the boy, not paying attention, almost ran headfirst into a particularly thick tree. Instead, he ran arms first into it, putting up an axe guard to protect his face. He bounced off the onto his butt, but he immediately leapt back up to keep running. That's when the monster decided to take a leap at the head first. Izuku, running off pure adrenaline at that point, didn't even think as he dived out of the way to the left. The monster jumped with such force that it shattered the trunk, raining splinters everywhere and felling the tree. It roared in pain, huge splinters stuck in its ears, eyes, and nose. It spun around to the boy, facing the cowering child. This would be a great time for my magic to reintroduce itself. He sat on the ground staring in silence at the beast being so close. There's the stench I was expecting. The naked monster stared at Izuku for a few breath-stealing moments, then looked left, then right, then all around like it was looking for something, as it clawed at its face, scratching wood and flesh off its face equally. As it pulled a large chunk of wood out of its septum, it began sniffing the air around him. What's it that can't see me? That must be it. It uses its other senses to hunt. Through the fog of fear, his logical mind started showing through. Okay, I can do something with that wet soil. The fact that I can smell wet soil means a river or lake is nearby. I can cover my scent in mud, hopefully. In an ironic sense, Izuku mimicked his would-be killer and started sniffing around for the scent of muggy ground. There it is. Quietly he made his way around the large thing, taking extra care not to step on anything that will alert his presence. But it was, alas, it was all for naught. A huge glob of blood and mucus impacted the ground beside him, getting very unmanly even by his standards. He looked back at the monster he just managed to get by. Apparently, the monster figured out how to clear his nose. So, if the girly squeal didn't alert it, its now working nose certainly let it know where Izuku was. And the chase was back on. His lungs are burning, his arms are heavy, his head is pounding, and that insistent chill is sapping all his energy. Yet he still somehow managed to stay ahead of the beast. But for how long? He wasn't some athletic marvel to begin with, and adrenaline could only do so much. The monster is steadily gaining on him, supernatural endurance and hunger pushing it closer and closer to the boy. I have to keep pushing. I don't want to die, I can't die. I've already worried mom enough, Sakura would be furious with me. And Shiro, it started getting brighter, a break in the forest in sight. He pushed himself harder. If I die, Shiro dies too. He busts through out of the forest to see a small lake filled with dark purple water. I made it. I just have dive in the water. He loses track of me, cover my scent, and I'm home free. That's when pain exploded on his back. A sudden heavy weight slammed into his spine, tossing him hard enough forward he cleared the lake, and then some. Pain racked his body as he tried to get up. I think my ribs are moving. The monster lumped the lake and landed about 3 feet in front of the boy, kicking up mud and grass onto the child. And without any preamble, the creature picked up the boy by his arm, eliciting a pained yelp from the boy. It opened its mouth. Oh man, I'm really about to be eaten. He closed his eyes. It continued opening its mouth. I'm sorry Sakura, Shiro, mom, the monster's mouth is now unnaturally wide, so wide that in fact a pain gurgle came out. Then a panicked one. Izuku opened his eyes to the great but horrifying sight of the top half of the monster's face being ripped off by a pale ginger-haired woman. He clearly saw the dainty hands pull and yank, first the cheek split, blood seeping out of the wound. She gripped and yanked harder, the crunching sound of teeth being crushed echoed in his head. Then finally she pulled it off with a gush of blood and saliva spouted out of its exposed esophagus and tongue. Flecks of the fluids landed on the child's face and chest. The woman calmly hopped off his shoulders as Izuku was dropped on his back. The body of the beast staggered for a moment before tumbling to the ground with some thunder. The woman, clad in a sea green romper that to the boy's embarrassment barely contained her feminine curves, black flip-flops, wearing a backpack and wild hair stuffed into a ponytail, lightly kicked the dead thing before letting out a loud guffaw and spoke in some foreign language. She turned around as another taller woman approached. This one was also quite pale, but her skin was more pristine compared to her companion's unhealthy pallor. She was also blonde with blue eyes, dressed in a bright yellow sundress and big sun hat that clashed beautifully with her not so sunny disposition. She had a large purse on her shoulder. She looked like a posh English lady, petite, stern, and beautiful. They both were. The posh lady walked up to the ginger, towering over her, which was impressive considering the redhead was pretty tall herself, and they began speaking to each other in their language that Izuku now realized is English. Well, he was sure one of them was speaking English. The other sounded like they were speaking English if English was dragged through a rocky countryside. Wheel, would ye keek at the baby on this yenir? This pat you'd o commission I reckon, the redhead said while appraising her work and its dong. The other woman scoffed at her companion's crudeness, speaking from experience. Ah, heavens nah, bastards aren't my type. Yes, your tastes do tend to skew more human and younger. Boy, why'd I hand a wi backquote I and the confines of the law. It's still unethical, Laura replied while ignoring the look of indignation she got. She focused on the dead body. Wonder what brought Yaksha up here. They dinar keep te the southeast region. It probably has something to do with this. She dipped her toe on a section of stomach that had kanji etched into it. The redhead, Laura winced at the characters, that's richt. Brassic thing lickily doolily and booked it up, Parrish said solemnly. Is that why you killed it? Sensed something weird with it? Or she looked up from the corpse to the left and saw little Izuku currently curled up, losing focus on the conversation he couldn't understand, coming to terms with how close to death he was and the brutal murder that prevented his death. She fixed her friend with a hard questioning look. Laura gave an embarrassed smile. Come on, he's a hurting green-haired wee laddie. It'd be against nature if I didn't a go ta him. Then she turned to the boy and cleared her throat, getting Izuku's attention before kneeling down. Hi little one, she spoke in perfect Japanese. You seem to have been put through the ringer, huh? She asked softly. Midoriya looked down at his body and he would have to agree with the buxom woman he had put through the ringer. He was already in destroyed clothes, but his little run with the blue naked monster definitely didn't do him any favors. His face was bleeding from splinters, his bandaged arms were stained red, also likely from the tree, his left shoe fell off, so his left foot was swollen and bleeding, his ribs were at minimum fractured, he was covered in dirt and mud, and to top it off the ice-cold pain started ramping up again. Because it just couldn't stand being off his list of ailments. What's your name? How did a human get into the coil pink? My name is Midoriya, and that was all he was able to get out before succumbing to the cold and the day's trials and passed out for the second time today. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.